A very important event in Brahms's life comes around 1885, when he starts to receive the collected works of Schütz, who wrote lots and lots of collections of vocal music, including the Psalmen Davids, the Symphonie Sacrée, not nearly as well known as, say, Bach or Handel, perhaps because he didn't write any independent instrumental music. And also, it's important to note, he was a student of Giovanni Gabrieli, the late Renaissance, early Baroque composer who liked to write with lots of polychoral singing. Two quick trivia facts about Schütz that are interesting. We talk about how Brahms did this revolutionary thing by writing a requiem in German based on non-traditional texts. Well, Schütz did it 200 years before Brahms did, but nobody knows this piece. It's a nice piece, it really is, and it's very text-sensitive. We don't know if Brahms knew that piece, but it's conceivable that he did, and if nothing else, Schütz gets credit for breaking new ground in that way, and he has something in common with Bach, too. In Bach's St. Matthew Passion, what happens whenever Jesus sings? He's accompanied by lots of strings, and Schütz does the same thing in his piece Die Sieben Worte whenever Jesus sings. We're going to sing a quick little excerpt of something by Schütz, just to give you an idea of some of his musical style. Here's what a polychoral excerpt looks like. Choir 2 sings, choir 1 sings, choir 2 sings, choir 1 sings. We get a lot of alternation. Now, Schütz liked to be very text-sensitive. He has a setting of Psalm 84, where when the singing is about the sparrow has found a home, only the higher voices sing. And when he sings about going through the valley of Baca, only the lower voices sing. And here's an example from Psalm 137. The text, "May my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth," and you'll notice that the tenors are off from everybody else. Almost like they're getting tongue-tied, like our tongue is literally cleaving to the roof of our mouth. It sounds like this. Sense of the polychoral singing as choir 2 sings against choir 1. It's very conversational. We gotta keep going. Liked some sections like this where there didn't seem to be any meter going on, and it was almost like choral recitative. Gedenke der Kinder Edom am Tage Jerusalem, die So with these three things in mind, text sensitivity, polychoral singing, and this constant affinity for it doesn't matter where the bar line is, let's be free and let the word accents dictate what's happening, Brahms sets out to write his last 2 sets of motets. The Drei Motetten, Opus 110, which we're not going to go into, and the Opus 109, the Fest- und Gedenkstücke. Take a look here at an excerpt of the piece we're about to sing for you. Choir 1, choir 2. Choir 1, choir 2. That same kind of polychoral singing we just heard in the Schütz excerpt. And actually, this affected not just his vocal music, but take a look at a famous part of Symphony No. 4, and you'll see we have a choir of string instruments, answered by a choir of wind and brass, then the strings, then the winds and brass, then the strings, and there's that same alternation, like 2 groups conversing with each other. Fest- und Gedenkstücke. Here are your live program notes for this piece. It's very important to understand the historical context. He intended these to be nationalistic pieces. And you'll see at the very end that he's given lots of suggestions for occasions that this could represent, and then he says, perhaps better not, as he realizes that all of them are anniversaries of French humiliation. Maybe that's not the best idea. But the fact remains that when he writes this, he has the national situation in mind. And here's what happened in Germany in 1888 when he wrote this. It was known as the Drei Kaiser Jahr, the year of 3 leaders, essentially. And what happened was early in the year, in March, Emperor Wilhelm I passed away. And Wilhelm was somebody that Brahms felt close to. He had dedicated a piece to him. And so Frederick III took over. And 3 months later, Frederick III was dead. And 29-year-old grandchild Wilhelm II took over, just 29 years old. And so it's not unreasonable to think that Brahms might have been very concerned about the political future in Germany. And it's been written that Brahms was deeply moved by the tragedy of the events in Germany and felt the blow which befell the royal family and house the fatherland more painfully than many who were closer to the monarch. So keep that in mind as I give you a little bit of a background on this piece now. It starts out, when a strong armed man guards his palace, his possessions remain in peace, and at the beginning, when it's polychoral, it is firmly in 3 beats to a measure, very stable.
Wenn stark,
then things progress, and we see, but every kingdom, if it becomes divided against itself, becomes desolate. And we get this very poignant harmony here, featuring these prominent Neapolitan 6th chords as it becomes desolate. And so it goes from this big texture to sound there. Now, we said it was a stable meter at the beginning, but now what's happening? Every kingdom, if it becomes divided against itself, becomes desolate, and one house falls upon the other. Take a look at your handout, and you'll see a little excerpt, I think it's number 6, of what the sopranos are singing for Und ein Haus fehlet, and you'll notice the falling motus. Sorry about that. Okay, so the sopranos from choir 2 will demonstrate that. However, all 4 parts from choir 2 sing it, and everybody starts on a different beat, so suddenly we don't know where the beat is. We've got rhythmic chaos all of a sudden, and then another example of the houses falling on each other. We go 7 steps through the circle of fifths. Span of 2 measures. Everything falling upon each other. Finally, we come back to the opening words, and even when that happens, it takes a while for the beat to get established. The soprano and alto of choir 1 will demonstrate. You'll notice they're off by a beat from each other. Now imagine that with 8 parts going on at the same time. Actually, you don't have to. You're about to hear it. So, Wenn ein starker Gewappneter.
Ein
with a very, very quick look at just one section of the last motet from this same set. Wo ist ein so herrlich Volk, number 3. And what's most important here is to look at the translation. These are the words of Deuteronomy spoken by Moses to the Israelites after their 40 years of wandering in the desert as they're about to enter the promised land. Only beware and guard your soul well, that you do not forget the things that your eyes have seen, and that they may not leave your heart all your life, and you shall teach this to your children and your children's children. Amen. And how does Brahms set to music this section about not forgetting what came before, not forgetting the past? A section I played very early on today. Just a quick moment to find the exact spot. So remembering, here it's the words of Moses saying, don't forget where you've come from, don't forget the experiences you've had, and here's the music. It's double choir writing, kind of like Schütz, a lot of declamation, a lot of group position chords, a lot of Baroque sounds. Just going to let it play quietly now. Keep it quiet. So what he's done here, he's used an older style of writing, granted with some romanticisms thrown in, to represent the words that say, don't forget the experiences that you've had, don't forget the past. And what's Brahms telling us? He's telling us, don't forget your musical past, don't forget our musical ancestors. And now we go all the way back to that article where he said that the innermost essence of music, the music of Bach and Handel, was missing from Wagner and Berlioz and Liszt, but was in his music. And so he's telling us, don't forget the past. And how does he do it? By using the music of the past right there. So, again, it would be a generalization to say Brahms, Mendelssohn, and Schumann always wrote using counterpoint and Baroque things, and Wagner, Liszt, and Berlioz never did. But let's say that for now anyhow. That Brahms, Mendelssohn, and Schumann were the much more conservative, and the others were the much more progressive. And Brahms continued to write in this older style, even though, as we've alluded to, he didn't feel very good about it. He didn't feel very comfortable doing it. So he had this counterpoint correspondence. He tried to take back the dedication to Spitta. He tried to say, yeah, my pieces are really just exercises. And what he did to try to counteract this, he practiced it a lot, he studied it a lot, and he marked in his music the things that he thought were important, the hemiolas, the cross rhythms, the cross relations, the structures of the fugues. He was a real student of that music. And what Brahms did succeed in doing, oh, that's the end of it, okay, there we go. Brahms succeeded in his own way of helping to keep the past alive. Now, the guy who's given the most credit for reviving the public's interest in Bach is Mendelssohn. In 1829, Mendelssohn conducted a famous performance of the Bach St. Matthew Passion. And to put it in oversimplified terms, before that, nobody was paying that much attention to Bach. Suddenly, this performance happens in 1829 that Mendelssohn conducts, and suddenly, oh, let's check out what Bach wrote before. The public interest is reawakened. Well, a similar thing happens in the late 1800s, because Brahms is performing Bach's music, he's studying it, and he's very simply writing motets, which are in a style that is reminiscent of Bach and older composers. And so they looked at Brahms's motets and thought, wow, these seem to be similar to Bach's writing. Let's look at Bach's motets a little bit. And so in that way, he helps to keep the music of Bach alive. And I guess my take-home message is that in the same way that Brahms advocated keeping the past alive, the music of the past, the musical roots, we should do the same with the Brahms motets, which are wonderful pieces and not performed all that often. But as you've seen, it takes a lot less manpower, so to speak, to do these Brahms motets than, say, a Brahms Requiem or a Nenia, where you need huge orchestral forces. And here, just this group of 24 has done a wonderful job with 2 very challenging Brahms motets. So they are difficult works. The German is hard. The voice leading can be tough. The ranges are hard. But they're wonderful. And they're a wonderful blend of the past and the romantic and very text sensitive. And I think that's all I have to say. So, thank you very much.